All right, we have to address some of the concerns people had after yesterday's announcement of WWDC happening on June 7th. A lot of people are lost now. They're like, okay, we thought there was going to be an April event, but it still hasn't been announced, and they have announced a June event, so what's actually going to get announced? What's the timeline here? What should we expect? All that stuff we'll cover in today's video. Let's begin. Something a little bit important to remember, and I apologize for the poor wording on my part in yesterday's video, but an April event could still technically happen. At least it would still be somewhat in order with how Apple has done things in the past. I don't exactly remember which years, but there have been years prior where Apple would announce Worldwide Developers Conference with the new invite image and talk about what kind of workshops they were going to be having. Because that's an annual event, and because that's something they do every year, they typically want to announce it ahead of schedule, ahead of time. But then after announcing WWDC, they will then announce a closer spring event that's only a few weeks away that's going to take place before the June event. Doesn't happen every year, but it has technically happened. The weirder part about this year, if there does end up being an April event, is that in the past, Apple would typically announce WWDC many months in advance, like maybe even February or early March. And if they do announce a spring event, that would almost always be at March. It would not be in April. So this would be one of the weirder times Apple would wait till end of March to announce WWDC, wait till April to announce an April event, which is only 2 months before the next Apple event. Now, these are weird times because of the pandemic and more events being done via live streams. And of course, last year we had some odd behavior from Apple in events that we'd never seen before. We had September event with no iPhones, which had never been done. And then a month later, an October event with iPhones. And then a month later, a 40-minute event just about a single processor. So it's safe to say Apple can still do whatever they want. You know, there's no strict law they have to follow. If they want to break the norm or break the formula, they absolutely can do that. All I'm saying is the fact that Apple has announced this June event and yet not announced an April event, in my opinion, it decreases the likelihood of an April event actually happening. Again, it's not impossible. I just say likelihood has probably dropped down a bit. What I think personally is more likely is the idea that Apple could have some site refreshes mid-April. In case you guys forgot, in March of last year and April, we did not get any events, but in March we got the Magic Keyboard case for the iPad Pro, which has terrible oil smudges on it. Man, this thing sucks. But the whole iPadOS update that finally allowed for trackpad support, yeah, that was in March of 2020 via a site refresh. So was the whole 2020 iPad Pro with a dual camera and LiDAR and everything. And then in April, we actually got the iPhone SE second generation, which a lot of people were saying there was no way that could come out mid-April, but it did. It was the first time Apple ever launched a somewhat brand new iPhone without an event or unveiling or anything. The last iPhone SE in 2016 was unveiled at a March event. This one was not. So it's safe to say that normally in the springtime, Apple likes to announce some type of hardware, and personally, I think it's very unlikely that Apple will do nothing from now until June. Again, still possible, but I'd be pretty surprised if between all these leaks of AirPods 3, mass production beginning, and more recently, we actually caught a report of an A14X chip being used in a unreleased iPad Pro was caught within iOS code. So we've heard about this mini LED iPad Pro with M1 levels of performance. Bloomberg said Apple was toying around with bringing a Thunderbolt port to the iPad and giving this thing 5G, okay, which we're all very excited for, I'm sure. It sounds very bizarre to me that Apple would end up developing all this, and we're hearing about it coming out in the first or second quarter, and then it doesn't launch until June. But it would be pretty funny given how many leaks there were saying that a mini LED iPad Pro would launch at the end of 2020. Then it turns out at the end of the day, Apple still waits over a year to refresh each iPad Pro, despite all of our leaks and rumors saying otherwise. But we also saw a few lines of code in an Xcode crash report of an ARM-powered iMac, which sounds like a confirmation of like, oh, okay, there's an Apple Silicon iMac in existence. Its refresh is imminent. It's about to drop. And I did honestly get pretty hopeful as soon as I saw the 21.5-inch iMacs getting storage options removed. Bizarrely, they removed like the best ones. They used to have 512 gig and 1 terabyte SSD variants for the 21.5-inch iMac. Kind of close to my heart because the first iMac I ever bought was a 21.5-inch, but they removed those SSD options, and now all they have is 256 gig SSD or 1 terabyte of Fusion, which honestly should not exist in 2020 as a whole. So as soon as I saw those models disappearing from the site, and of course partner that with the iMac Pro getting discontinued, it made me think, maybe Apple's planning on introducing a Apple Silicon iMac sooner than we thought. You know, maybe we're gonna get the 24-inch iMac first, because Apple kind of did a big refresh for the 5K iMac last year with the matte frosted glass variant and the new CPUs, but the 21.5-inch iMac didn't really get many new options. In fact, now it's getting less options. So that gives me hope that maybe the 24-inch iMac is pretty close, and it could be a site refreshed, or if there is an April event, that would be a great time to unveil it. Although at the same time, I would be bummed out if they just did the first smaller size option for the ARM iMac, because I'm like, I want the newer up-to-date iMac with better Apple Silicon, but at the same time, I also want to wait for the bigger one that was rumored to be around 32 inches, and maybe I gotta wait another 6 months for that to launch. So ideally, both would come out at the same time, but it's safe to say there's a lot of rumored things to launch, whether it be AirTags or a new Apple TV has been rumored for years now. So I would not be shocked if we at least get some site refreshes mid-April, or we get an April event announcement next week or something like that. So I would not hold out on nothing getting announced until June, although that's still possible. I'm guessing here that Apple's gonna drop some stuff that they may not deem as a major announcement, but save some hardware for WWDC, because I think that unveiling new designs is always best in an event, and I always hate seeing designs unveiled via a site refresh. Honestly, I was really confused and bummed out that after the 40-minute November event, Apple wanted to release AirPods Max as a site refresh, because that honestly would have been a great time to bring something out on a artificial stage or during a live stream, be like, here's this new design, here's all the work we put into it. I guess they want to avoid more pro stand moments where the crowd starts laughing as they unveil the price, but there was no crowd at the November event. It's all just a live stream, so who cares? You could even just not bring up the price and instead say coming soon, and pricing and availability will be revealed later. What do you guys prefer? Do you like site refreshes, or do you like having an event to get hyped for? Feel free to let me know your guys' thoughts on whether or not there will be an April event or site refreshes, or are we just gonna get nothing for the next few months? It's gonna get dry in the tech space. Expect more Neuralink videos. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Save some hardware for go. Save some hardware for could. Same sub. Say.